I now have everything I need to flavor my root beer, but there's still one last ingredient I need if I want to carbonate it. The history of carbonated beverages began in 1767, when Joseph Priestley discovered a method to infuse carbon dioxide into water. Finding that it gave the water a pleasant taste, it wasn't long before carbonated beverage was being sold commercially. By the 1800s, additional flavoring began to be added to the carbonated beverage, which included root beer. Priestley's method of carbonating water involved dissolving chalk with sulfuric acid. However, most carbonating today is done with the use of pressurized carbon dioxide. For making root beer, the traditional recipe usually involves the use of yeast, a single-cell organism that consumes some of the sugar in the drink and produces carbon dioxide, which carbonates the beverage. To get this microbial organism, I turned to Caleb Levar at Fair State Brewing.
Oh, hey.
Hey, Caleb?
Hi, yeah, you must be Andy. Nice to meet you.
So you're going to show me how to make some yeast?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeast are everywhere. In a brewery like this, they're probably floating all over. They're on your hands. They're in the barrels, they're everywhere. So we've got one here from the headwaters of the Mississippi. So about a year ago, a professor at the University of Minnesota set some plates out for me up in Itasca State Park, and after a day of them sitting out, we were able to isolate some yeast off of them.
So how do you isolate just the yeast?
Try to find the colonies that look like yeast. So these are these milky white or sort of cream colored colonies. They should be fairly smooth, not have a whole lot of surface features on them. And you pick one of those colonies and you streak it out on another plate, just like that. And you keep doing that until you can look at that plate and see that there's only one type of colony on there. That means there's only one organism there, and you have that in pure culture then. So that's a pretty nice, fairly neutral yeast strain that might work out really well.
So what's the next step with this yeast?
So what you'll need to do then is essentially grow up enough of that yeast into a starter big enough to carbonate your root beer. And so what you'll want to do is sterilize a paper clip just by holding it in a fire. And you'll simply grab one of these colonies, and then you can dip that colony into some sugar water. And you'll want to wait then until that's foamy and you have enough yeast cells to actually carbonate your root beer appropriately.
Is there anything I should be careful for when I bottle it?
Basically, those yeast are going to want to take all of the sugar that's left in your root beer and convert that to CO2 and to ethanol. And so it wants to take your root beer and make beer. And if you put that sugar water into a bottle and you just let it sit out warm, eventually that CO2 is going to build up to too high of a pressure in that bottle, and it's going to blow that bottle up and it's going to make a terrible mess.
Now I have everything to finally make the root beer. I have the water that I collected in northern Minnesota in the boundary waters. This is supposedly Dorothy's secret ingredient, and it seems to add a little extra root beer flavor. Then we have the maple syrup that I collected in central Minnesota, thanks to my sister-in-law and her family. And thanks to Caleb Levar at Fair State Brewing, we have the yeast to carbonate the beverage. Then I have the sassafras and wintergreen that I foraged on the east side of Lake Michigan. And now that we have all the ingredients, we can get started on making the root beer. So first up, I'm going to start chopping up the roots. Some sharper knives. It's very fragrant. Already smells like root beer. Now I got the sassafras all chopped up. Next, take the wintergreen, chop that up too. It's very minty. All right, that should be good. Let's get boiling water. Now to pour in the water from the boundary waters. Just strain it, move out any particles. Now I just need to add the wintergreen and sassafras. Now that it's boiled for 20 minutes, it's kind of leached out all the flavor from the roots and herbs. So now I just gotta strain it. All right, so now we strained it. We just have kind of a sassafras tea left. So now we're just gonna add the maple syrup to help sweeten it and turn more into a root beer. It's pretty good. Tastes like root beer, just a little flat, which means next I need to add the yeast. So I have my sterilized jar right here. Just gonna add it in. And now, seal the cap. Agitate the yeast. I'll just explode from all the shaking. All right, just gotta let it sit and ferment and let the yeast carbonate it. In a few days, we'll have root beer.
Watch new episodes of How to Make Everything, Tuesday and Thursday, brought to you by Soylent. Because food doesn't have to be complicated.